Jim, they refused to pardon you.
They refused. The state's promise didn't mean anything. It was all lies. They just wanted to get me back so they can have their revenge. To keep me here 9 more years. Why, their crimes are worse than mine. Worse than anybody's here. They're the ones that should be in chains, not we.
You don't have to stay here 9 years, Jim. The commission voted that if you were a model prisoner, for 1 year, they would concede that you had paid your obligations in full. It's only 9 months, Jim.
9 months of this torture. I won't do it. I won't do it, I tell you.
Jim.
I'll get out of here.
Jim.
Even if they kill me for it.
Jim, it's still better to be honorably free. And in those 9 months, we'll be working for you night and day.
But you've been working night and day. It didn't do any good.
But, Jim, we'll have the whole country behind you then, and the state will be forced to release you.
All right. I'll wait 9 more months. I'll be a model prisoner if it kills me.
You are listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. The following podcast contains adult language, adult situations, and spoilers for the movies discussed occur often. You've been warned. Now, take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
Playing the theme song to our podcast just gets me pumped up a little bit more.
Yeah, no, there we go.
But welcome. It is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 112, and I'm your host, Lee. You can go all over the world and you won't find worse, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. I'm free, white, and 21 Harper. How you doing, sir?
I had forgotten that line was in this movie, and surely it's higher than 112. Isn't it 172 or something?
No, it just feels like it.
Okay.
Did I say 112?
You did.
Oh, 212.
212, okay.
Yeah.
We've been doing this longer than that, Lee.
I'm on the ball, man.
Yeah.
As I tell you. Time means nothing when you've been, doing a real long stretch, as it were,
Yeah,
But,
that's how it goes, yeah. Doing this podcast is very much like being tortured doing 16-hour days of hard labor with 1 day off a week. Yeah, that's very much what it feels like, doing this podcast with you.
But we are still in 1932. Still got a few more episodes there.
I think we'll be moving to 33 next week. I think that's
Okay.
the plan, yeah.
We're the penultimate episode in 1932 for now. And we're going to be looking at I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. And that should be fun. Well, the subject matter ain't all that fun, but
it's a good movie, so at least we'll have fun talking about it. So
yeah. We have no feedback this week.
Nobody cared to say anything to us, which is fine.
No hatred even on YouTube, which is disappointing. But
where's the movie? We'll just leave it at that. Yeah, where's the movie?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We'll just move on to we've watched lately. You Have Nothing. I will mention a couple things here real quick. So the first one I just watched, and it's got quite the title. It's from 2020. It's called Uncle Peckerhead, and it's definitely not what it sounds like. It's a.
Is this the sequel to the 1998 John Waters film Pecker?
No. That has Christina Ricci in it, doesn't it?
I think so. It has Edward Furlong. So.
I don't care about Edward Furlong. Christina Ricci, I have time for. But
Fair enough.
but yeah, this is a sort of punk rock horror comedy. It's kind of like if Green Room had a lot of laughs in it. Instead of them being barricaded by Nazis.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically this down on their luck band who want to hit it the big time, they need a tour van. And so they hire a van from this guy who calls himself Uncle Peckerhead. And he's just this easygoing sort of southern redneck dude who turns out to be like the best friend you could hope for, as a roadie. Just really encouraging and really excited for the band and stuff. The only catch is at midnight for 13 minutes every night, he turns into a flesh-eating demon of some sort. And his secret gets exposed the first night, of course, that they're together. Kills a sleazy promoter that was trying to take them for their money. And they decide, well, you know what? He's a pretty good roadie, and he's got a van, so we might as well keep him along. So they just try to keep him under wraps and stuff like that. But, of course, he ends up killing more real dirtbag people who treat the band poorly, and it takes a bit of a twist at the end, but really well done. I enjoyed it. Just a really enjoyable little horror comedy. I kind of wanted to see like the version of Green Room now, where it's this band gets booked at that Nazi club, and Uncle Peckerhead at the stroke of midnight just wipes out the whole lot of them.
Just wipes them all out. Yeah, that sounds great. Perfect. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, I do, you do have to admire the, 13 minutes read at midnight. Really, maybe he just never thought it was going to come up because, those punk bands are well known for their, going to bed early and, living clean life kind of attitude towards things. So,
Yeah, but no, it's fun. Don't let the name dissuade you. It is a fun little horror comedy and one of the best I've seen this year. So it's
awesome.
good.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Another one I watched from 2018 called Alpha, and this is kind of a family picture. It's the humans from 20,000 years ago. Like this young kid gets separated from his tribe and bonds with a wolf. It's kind of like telling the fantasy narrative of how man and domesticated the wolf or whatever kind of thing.
Sure. Like how dogs became domesticated. Sure.
Yeah. Fine, just kind of a light family film in a way. Definitely a throwback though. Like you don't really see family films like this so much anymore. I don't think, where they have a lot of like hardship and adventure and stuff that feels a bit more gritty. Man, we as a race, we looked super hot 20,000 years ago. I gotta tell you, we had perfect hair and all the beard oil and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, everybody grew up. I presume. Sounds very historically accurate there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you can get over that, it's actually pretty enjoyable. Light fare, but a good one you can like watch for your kids and stuff like that. Yeah, so sure. And the last one I'll mention, this is a haunted house film from 2020. It's a Kevin Bacon haunted house film called You Should Have Left. Kevin Bacon plays this like screenwriter who's noticeably older than his current wife, Amanda Seyfried or whatever her name is.
Yep.
Yeah, and they have this cute little daughter together, and they decide to rent this little sort of vacation home in Wales, and just to get away from the world for a little while. And of course, it's a weird house. There's weird shit happening at the house. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. There's like mysterious hallways leading places, and all that stuff's really good. Very much like it's not The Shining. But, it's done well enough where it's like, yeah, it's as kind of creepy as The Shining, as far as like the interiors and all that go. Kind of turns into a standard haunting movie at the end with a twist you can kind of see coming a mile away. But for the most part, pretty good. Good performances. The host kind of plays people against each other. Like there's tension between him and his young wife who's probably cheating on him. And there's also kind of a weird connection to what was that fucking Harrison Ford ghost movie from the 90s? What Lies Beneath or something like that? What Lies
Beneath, yeah. I think that's from like 2001 or something, yeah.
Yeah, it almost feels a little bit like a remake of that, and in a certain way. But maybe that's too spoiler-rific there.
Possibly. I haven't seen the film, but no. I actually saw What Lies Beneath theatrically, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's all right. I mean, it's pretty decent,
Yeah, it was all right.
It does the thing it does.
It was Michelle Pfeiffer was in that, too.
Yep.
Wasn't she? Yeah. But yeah, that's all we got. So we can move on. We'll take a quick little break. We'll play some music, podcast promo. We'll come back and talk about I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang.
Broadcasting from the cursed earth, the Psychosemanticast.
Let us face, without panic, the reality of our time. The fact that atom bombs may someday be dropped on our cities. And let us prepare for survival by understanding the weapon that threatens us.
To have an ignorant, thin-skinned megalomaniac who sends off Twitters at 3 a.m. if somebody angered him.
The neo-Nazis turning up in Washington, D.C. to have a rally saying Heil Trump.
We talk about politics.
I knew I couldn't trust you corporate greaseballs.
We talk about movies.
You can't come down here and arrest people just because of what they look like. Are you crazy? But that's police harassment.
We talk about political movies.
We're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. They're all around us and we never knew it. You can only see them with these special glasses.
The Psychosemanticast.
I hear something saying, That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. All day long they're saying, That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. All day long they work so hard till the sun is going down. Working on the highways and byways and wearing a frown. You hear them moaning their lives away. Then you hear somebody say, that's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. Can't you hear them saying, I'm going home one of these days. I'm going home, see my woman whom I love so dear. But meanwhile, I've got to work right here. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. All day long they're saying, my work is so hard, give me water, I'm thirsty, my work is so hard, whoa, my work is so hard,
Okay, we're back for I'm a Fugitive of a Chain Gang from 1932, and we'll just play a truncated trailer here. The trailer was like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's like, I gotta cut that down a little bit. But here we go.
All right.
Here he is, the man who preferred death to the tortures of the chain gang. His was the most sensational escape in chain gang history. Crawling through the thick brush, bloodhounds at his heels, hiding in swamps, he outwitted his pursuers at every turn. This man has lived 1,000 lives in one. A hunted thing on earth.
I'll learn you to sit up and hold on to this. Come on, get up.
I was just wiping the sweat off my face. But you got it knocked off. Fellas, it's about time we called quits. You've been pulling a bluff on me, and I've been fool enough and coward enough to fall for it.
Oh, you filthy, good-for-nothing convict. A bluff, eh? You will see. You'll see.
What's that doing?
Give me the police station. Jim, why haven't you come before?
I couldn't. I was afraid to.
You could have written. It's been almost a year since you escaped.
But I haven't escaped. They're still after me. They'll always be after me. No friends, no rest, no peace.
Oh, Jim.
Keep moving. That's all that's left for me.
Directed by Mervyn LeRoy, and you might have heard of some of the stuff this guy's been involved with. Producer and director, big name in Warner Brothers around this time. Directed 9 films that have been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, and that's just sort of scratching the surface of stuff that he's done that's been nominated. You might know him from Little Caesar from 1930. He has an uncredited credit on The Wizard of Oz from 1939. Helped with that. The Bad Seed from 1956. And his last film, unfortunately, he helped ghost direct with John Wayne, The Green Berets from 1968. But, you know, they can't all be great little cinematic gems. But
well, you know, especially when you're, kind of director for hire with Warner Brothers. I just looking at the list myself, I didn't check him out before I came on here. But, lots of great stuff here. We should definitely kind of mine this for some material, I think.
Yeah. So this is written by Howard J. Green, Brown Holmes, and Sheridan Gibney, and it's based on the novel by Robert E. Burns, I Am a Fugitive from a Georgia Chain Gang. We should get into that before we get to the cast, honestly. Just briefly here, the history here. This film is actually based on Robert E. Burns' true story. It's changed a little bit. It makes the main character look a little bit more heroic than Robert E. Burns actually was. But it basically sticks to the facts. Burns himself stole like $5.29 in order to eat. He managed to escape from the Georgia legal system. He escaped the chain gang.
Even in 1921, I did the calculation on this. It's only like $80. Like, this is not, this is not like, oh, you stole $5. That was probably worth that was like 5 men's years' wages in 19. No. That was, it's literally like, it's like the contents of a cash register. It's nothing,
But yeah, he did escape. He tried to restart his life basically, and with the help of 3 different governors in New Jersey, apparently, sort of kept him out of George's grasp. And so he basically wrote his book, sold his story to Hollywood while he was still on the lam. Actually went to Hollywood for a little while as it was being filmed, but then fled back to New Jersey because he was a little skittish, a little worried that he might get picked up, And Warner Brothers took a big chance on this, basically. They weren't doing so well. They did. This is like their first in a string of, I guess, social commentary films because this was such a big hit. So it's like, oh, we can probably do these, And although Georgia was never named in the actual film, like it's never said where the actual chain gang was and stuff, they were still sued by the Georgia corrections or whatever, including the chain gang warden, J. Harold Hardy. They all sued. Didn't go anywhere, but it did give them a lot of trouble. And apparently the film was banned in Georgia, and the studio's head and the film's director were told that should they ever find themselves in Georgia, they'd be treated to a dose of the social evil they so roundly denounce in this film. But and yeah,
that is certainly a thing that really makes me think kindly upon those people. Oh, you criticize us for being harsh and torturing prisoners. We'll show you.
We'll show you, tortured boy. Yeah. But Robert E. Burns did get his sentence commuted eventually, and made out pretty well for himself. But so we'll go to the cast here. This is starring Paul Mooney as James Allen. He's probably best known, other than this film, for Scarface from 1932. At least that's what jumped out at me. I looked at his career, and it's a fucking long one. Like almost everybody on this actually had a pretty long career or long life.
No. It was. This is kind of a big budget picture. It has, big name people who lasted a while. Mooney, best known for Scarface, and this both in the same year, ironically. He apparently Marlon Brando himself, at one point worked with Mooney and called him like the greatest actor he had ever seen. Which, you can definitely kind of look at Paul Mooney and think this is sort of the early thing that like the method acting is gonna become. Yeah. Like he's kind of doing an early version of it. And it is a phenomenal performance. Obviously, I think one of the reasons to recommend the film. But what's interesting is that most of his career was on stage. He kind of comes, he spends a lot of time on stage, and then kind of comes to Hollywood almost reluctantly. Is kind of like hangs around being a contract player for, a decade and some change, and then kind of goes back to the stage, and then he has some, personal. Apparently, he lost his eye, and had some personal issues, and eventually dies, but not until the 60s. So by the standards of the people that we're talking about in the films in this era, like he was a wizened old man.
Yeah, he lived into his 70s, so he did pretty well. I guess he had like a heart condition for his entire life too. Rheumatoid heart or whatever. But I guess one of the big things with him is why he's still revered as such a big star is that he's actually one of these guys who did some silent films and actually transitioned to the talkies because he had the sort of voice for it, as opposed to a lot of other people. And I guess that's partly due to his, his stage background too. So kind of a big fucking deal here he is. Glenda Farrell is Marie Woods. She was in Little Caesar, and she was also in this stood out. This is something we should probably look into at some point. The Torchy Blaine series, which is she's like a girl reporter. Like she had her own series of like 3 or 4 films as like this girl reporter, getting in romances, getting in danger, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
definitely something we should take a look at. Now, I noticed that there are 3 almost interchangeable blondes in this film.
Yeah, I had trouble.
That look very, very similar, and they all had very long, distinguished careers. And so we should definitely, start throwing some movies onto our list from there. Anyway, we got to get through this cast list eventually, so we can talk about the movie.
The rest of this is very speedy. Helen Vinson as Helen. Noel Francis as Linda. Noel Francis, excuse me. Preston Foster as Pete. Ellen Jenkins as Barney Sykes. Benton Churchill as the judge. Edward Ellis as Bomber Wells, who should be mentioned because he is the titular Thin Man in The Thin Man from 1934.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, the catalyst, basically, for that entire series.
Which is on our list to do when, in like 6 months, we get to 1934.
Yeah. David Landau is the warden. Hale Hamilton is Reverend Robert Allen. Sally Blaine as Alice. Lewis Carter as James Allen's mother. Willard Robinson as prison board chairman. Robert McWade as F.E. Ramsey. Robert Warwick as Fuller. And William Lemaire as a Texan. He's actually credited in the movie, too, as a Texan, because they have everyone's picture at the beginning of it, like, crediting them. And it's like, William Lemaire, a Texan. He's just a fucking Texan. That's what he is. That's a character.
That's all you had to be, yeah.
So, synopsis here. Having returned from fighting in World War I, James Allen doesn't want to settle for the humdrum life and decides to set off to find his fortune. He travels the length and breadth of America, working as a skilled tradesman in the construction industry. When times get tough, however, he finds himself living in a shelter where an acquaintance suggests they go out for a hamburger. What the friend really has in mind is to rob the diner, and Allen soon finds himself working on a chain gang with a long jail sentence. Allen manages to escape, however, and heads to Chicago, where over several years he slowly but surely works his way up the ladder to become one of the most respected construction engineers in the city. His past catches up with him, and despite protestations from the civic leaders and many friends in Chicago, he finds himself again in the chain gang. Escaping for a second time, he accepts that to survive, he must lead a life of crime. Written by Gary K. MCD. And that is sort of the major touch points on this. Yeah. So I assume this is the first time watch for both of us?
Yeah, first time watch, just this evening, actually. So
yeah. So what are your sort of general thoughts?
I really, really like this. I mean, this, we've kind of been talking about how, like, this year is just, like, we watch so many amazing films because we're literally going back and just watching amazing films from the past this year. But this very well, I mean, this would easily make my top 10 list in any other year. It may not make my top 10 this year just because we've done so much other great stuff, but it's up there. It's up there. And I think Mooney's performance Mooney's performance is definitely one of the best performances I'll see this year. Like,
yeah,
particularly for the time period. I mean, I think it is one of the things we can talk about is like certain moments are a little bit easier to, they kind of come across as slightly comical and sort of the kind of over dramatic way that like just acting just kind of was around this time. But at the same time, there's a lot of really great stuff here. I'm struck by the way that the film, I mean, it does hew pretty closely to sort of the real story as I understand it. That Robert Burns becomes like, he becomes like an editor and a writer more so than like, he doesn't go into like the building trades, but he definitely has this sort of like, he becomes sort of a scion of high society. He becomes this kind of like really well-respected guy. And that allows him to sort of like write this thing and to be able to, kind of curry favor in these kind of places. He also like, totally like the whole thing of, I rented a room from this girl and then ended up marrying her and then like left her for like a 21-year-old. Totally in the film and totally part of what happened. And apparently the actual woman that he married denied ever like tipping off the cops. And there is a thing of like where she's kind of the bad person in this film. And we really get a sense of, like she's definitely sort of treated that way by the movie, probably unfairly. I don't know. Yeah. It's kind of hard to know exactly what the history is there.
I get a real feeling that our protagonist here in real life was not that great of a dude.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but I also think that even in the film, I don't think we're really kind of given, like, it kind of doesn't matter, right? Like, the point isn't, and this is something that, Hollywood films just kind of do, is, you want to portray, like, oh, he's the innocent person who is subjected to these things, and all these other guys, they may be actual bastards, and they deserve this treatment, but actually, our one guy, our hero, like, he's, kind and virtuous and like doesn't kick the puppy, etc. And it's like, no, actually no one deserves this. Like this is inhumane for anyone, and it's also like, once the chain gangs go away, because that's sort of the effect of the film, is that southern states started banning the use of chain gangs, which unfortunately came back in Alabama in the 90s for a brief period. Yeah. Although not under quite such aggressive.
It was more like road cleanups and stuff.
Yeah, road cleanups and that kind of stuff, right? Also, prison in general is just that bad these days. Like they're like Angola State Prison in Louisiana, which is, I believe he's supposed to be serving time in Louisiana. I thought he was in New Orleans, but I could be mistaken on that. Angola State Prison is essentially an unreformed slave plantation. It really just it was a slave plantation that became a prison, and then after the Civil War, it just sort of kept doing the same thing. Like it literally is. It's as close as you can get to what life is actually like on a slave plantation in the 21st century.
And oh my God, the fucking the black prisoner, the big muscle bound prisoner, where the guy jokes, he's such a good worker, they plan on keeping him on anyway. They're never going to let him out. Like, oh my God.
Oh no, it's so on the nose, but it's so like true, right? This isn't. That's they'll just jam him up on some other charge. They'll call it bad behavior or whatever, just to kind of keep him working. And that's the point completely. Conditions in prisons have not improved greatly from, they're still served rotten food and moldy food, and they're still kind of like worked under slave-like conditions. I mean, this is not, they just moved it indoors, and it's absolutely atrocious. It's terrible. That said, it's nice that people at least recognize the chain gangs, that the most appalling conditions were bad. And the film clearly has a lot to say about that. And I think it's very effective, not just at sort of portraying that reality, but I think it's an effective kind of piece of drama. I think it actually works like as a movie, even without the sort of the impetus of the kind of the social policy, the kind of sociological engineering kind of elements to it. I think it works as a film. I think it works dramatically. I kind of really buy this guy. I think the ending kind of, I don't know, I have some issues with the ending, but I think we can get there as we get there. But yeah, overall, I think the film was very, very good. And I'm actually probably going to buy the DVD and actually own this one. I really enjoyed it. So,
so this is definitely proto-noir. This is so close. When you think of noir, you kind of got to go as far as probably the 40s before you really get a film that kind of really fits that genre, but everything's kind of in place here. Like, honestly, the ending definitely is so fucking noir that it,
right. Almost to its detriment. Again, we'll get to the ending, I think, here in a minute. But I mean, we can talk about it if you want. I'm just,
No. Absolutely love this. This probably will go on my best of the year list. I kind of feel like it was that good. I mean, this is not the first prison film from this era that had a big influence on other films, but it's probably the most influential I can think of. Like, okay, I'm blanking on those, but I do know ones that were influenced by this one. I can definitely think of them. There's a swamp escape in Blackmail from 1939 with Edward G. Robinson, which is definitely pulled from this.
White Heat kind of borrows from this to a large degree. I mean, there is a sense in which, large numbers of, like, think about how many movies you've seen that have protagonists or, sort of figures that have served like prison terms who sort of like come out and then and it all kind of comes from this kind of DNA. Not that this is like the first of sort of the prison in a movie, but certainly a hugely influential one, both because of its like cultural impact, its sociological impact, and its box office. I mean, it just made a lot of money. And so it's funny that like there are so many films that sort of have people who have kind of served their prison terms, who kind of get out, who kind of are treated as, regular protagonists who have needs, who have, which sort of ends when the period of mass incarceration in the United States in the 80s. It is interesting that like you just kind of like, oh, and now all these people are terrible because they were doing crack cocaine. You see,
doing the cocaine,
Yeah. No, the crack cocaine.
Oh, the crack cocaine.
These are those kinds of people. If you know what I'm trying to suggest, these are not our people. These are different.
They're very they're street people. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, they're street people.
Urban.
They have urban attitudes.
Exactly. Yeah, but also like the truck escape. That's there's a segment in Cool Hand Luke that basically duplicates that, and then there's
even bits of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, that like chase scene sort of seemed to borrow from that. I could see that.
But I mean, the way prison life is depicted in this, and it's funny too because it's only like the first segment of the film for the most part shows you the prison life stuff, and then once you get to about the 40-minute mark, it moves to his escape and his life on the lam, and then you get back to the prison briefly or whatever. But for the few minutes you're there in the prison, goddamn the conditions! Like those chains they're wearing, the leg irons would effectively cripple you after wearing them for a few weeks, right? Like, so even if you got them off, you couldn't effectively run away for the most part. It was that bad. You see the guy who gets out, and everyone's waving at him, hey, good luck, what the fuck. And the guy's like has trouble walking to the fucking truck that's going to take him away because he can't walk properly anymore, right? But when they load them up that first night, they load them up on the truck to send them out to the yard to the quarry to smash rock. The system they have, so that they have them all sit on the flatbed of the truck. They put the chain through all their loops and lock it to the truck. But there's enough loose chain there where if someone slipped off of the truck, they would pull like 3 or 4 other people off the truck with them, and they'd probably go under the fucking wheels of the truck. Jesus Christ, it's fucking horrific.
Right. There's also like a strict system of segregation that seems to be in place here, where like the black convicts are in like one thing, and I was really wondering what this film would do with race, and actually, I mean, it's got its problems, but by the standards of the stuff we've been seeing, it's it does at least humanize the one black man who gets a line or two.
Oh man, and so his prep work for his escape is like, I need you to smash my ankles with your hammer to loosen up, like to deform my leg irons enough that I can slip out of them at the time when the time comes for me to run. And I got to sit here and take it while you smash these fucking things.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you potentially cripple yourself before you even get your plan
you
off.
could very easily just like break your ankle right in that moment. And do you think, certainly by the standards of the film, like there's no infirmary here.
Mm-mm.
You break your ankles and then it's like, well, okay, well, hop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that guy who has the stomach problems or whatever the fuck, and he can't work anymore, and they just let him like lay there and basically die.
Can't work. We're gonna splash water on you, and that's it.
Yep.
And the next day, it's like, well, he's dead. I find it interesting just in terms of like the backstory that you kind of get, because there is this like extended narrative that like before he gets into prison, which I think is interesting in that it does track Burns' story, the real life author's story, to some degree. But it's like, I went to the war. I was a decorated war veteran. I come back. I've got this kind of boring ass job that I don't want to do. Instead, I want to kind of go off and do this other thing. And then I'm going to go and seek my fortune. So you kind of get this like sort of relationship between like his brother and I think his mom or something, having this kind of back and forth, which really only comes back at the very end, and you really don't get like a clear sense of a thematic through line. But it does do this sort of thing of like saying, going and working in a factory, even in like the cushy desk job which he was given, which is as boring as like sorting paperwork is. It's not like you're actually going to be working on the shop floor or anything like that. So
well, there's a PTSD nod here, right? Because so they give him a desk job, and that's definitely a way better job than he had in the factory before he went to war. But he gets there, and they're firing off blasting caps or whatever outside the building to or whatever the fuck the factory's doing. And it's like, I can't stay here.
They're building a road next to like a bridge or something, and like he's staring at that bridge, and that's like what he really wants to do is to kind of go and study civil engineering and become an engineer, which is what he eventually does in the film. But the film connects like my work as a soldier, when I was kind of being forced to kind of do these things and kind of be this person, with work in a factory, which is, I'm in this very like automated, I'm a cog in a machine. I'm just kind of doing the thing to like make production happen, even if I'm just kind of sorting paperwork. It definitely treats those two things as very similar. And then he ends up in the actual prison system, which is the most regimented kind of version of that, right? And despite but like what he wants is to have like the freedom to kind of go out and be a worker and like sell his labor at his own like kind of will, and to study civil engineering so that he can actually go out and build things and make a difference in the world and not just be that. And I think that the fact that the film is about prison and about prison labor at that point, which is not something that's ever gone away in this country, but also that it equates factory labor at the time with being a soldier and having like very similar kinds of, like this is war done by other means in a certain way. And I think there's something interesting there. I think there's something that the film touches but doesn't quite explore in those terms. And I find it interesting that it even bothers to go there, because Mooney himself was also blacklisted kind of later in his career, and he was like friends with a lot of people who were blacklisted for during the McCarthy era, and which again there's some kind of political relevance kind of happening there, and it's not subtle, but it's not really explored in detail. But I found it interesting that it's so signaled at the very beginning of the film in material which is otherwise pretty extraneous, obviously. You can pretty much just kind of start the film 15 minutes in with, I'm going to go off and make my fortune, and then like I'm broke, and then I ran up to a guy, and then I end up accidentally committing a robbery, and then I'm sentenced to prison.
Yeah, you're right. You really don't need the sort of preface of, I came back from war and stuff. Like, you can jump right into, he's a guy, Depression era, trying to make his way, and he he falls short and goes into a life of crime.
This is pre-Depression. This is like 21. This is This is long before the Depression. This is like the good times, right? But there's this glut of labor because all these men have come back from war. Like
Right.
that's kind of the problem is, we're building a bunch of shit, and then like ultimately you're competing as labor with the effective slave labor force that is the chain gang system, which is sort of the other unstated thing that is definitely in the film, but is not explored in any way. Is like ultimately, well, and now I'm working for literally nothing for like the gruel that they give me every day for 16 hours a day, and making the work that I would have otherwise been happy to do were I a free man kind of going out and doing it on my, there's an interesting balance there, right? Like,
the shit they're eating too, it's lard and sorghum and bacon fat or something like that. It's like, oh God.
It's like, we're going to give you fat and starch. This is what we feed you because this will keep you working long enough for us to like make our money.
So you're saying this film, whether intentionally or maybe just slightly by accident, kind of touches on foreseeing what factory work ends up being like during World War II, where it becomes a super patriotic thing where it's like, ladies, get into the factories and you can fight the war too against the Krauts and stuff like that. The whole workforce gets sort of, or a majority of the workforce gets, retooled around for the war effort. We're going to produce parts for tanks and shit like that. And do your part to fight in the Hun. And
I think I get that reading, and I'm making a slightly different point because like the the IWW was founded just a few years before the events of this film. It was, it was 20 years old or something at the time that the film was made. And there's, Eugene V. Debs had like run for president, 4 times by the time this FDR was president, would be president at the end of 1932. So, but there is this idea that there's, leftist political organizing and like union organizing was a huge thing that was kind of going on politically around this time, and was like, it would have been, the fact that it's not in the film is really just sort of it's so in the culture around this time that it doesn't have to be stated, right? But, it is sort of like suggesting that, the imperialist kind of war ambition of 1918 of, the European powers battling each other and sending the working classes in to like die for them and this sort of expansionist regime of sort of rapacious capital and ultimately the prison system. It's all sort of part of the same system. And I think that like the film, again, it doesn't go there, it doesn't do this at all overtly in the film, but it's portraying something because it is through a lens darkly. It is portraying a man's life, like he has participated in the system in all 3 ways. I think it's interesting that the real life figure became a writer and an editor, whereas the film kind of gives our protagonist a job as like an upper level civil engineer who becomes like a big and kind of famous muckety muck in this, what do they call it? The tri state engineering firm or whatever it's called.
Right? He's totally establishment at his peak,
Oh yeah, no. And of course it's because he becomes a member of this establishment, because he becomes a member of this like elite class, that he gets this sort of political protection that he does. Which, I just love that you run into this guy Bomber. Bomber helps him escape the first time. Then he shows back up in like the worst of the worst prison system, and Bomber is still there, been swinging that hammer all this time for the 8 years or whatever that this guy's been gone, and it's a fascinating sort of angle on it, and
it is sad because guys like Bomber are just lifers basically. They got nothing else, outside of prison. It's kind of like Shawshank Redemption, that old prisoner who he gets out and then there's nothing there for him. Like he gets a job bagging groceries and he can't swing it, and he just he hangs himself,
Well, and we don't get enough of a background on Bomber to kind of know exactly what's going on. I mean, it is like it is one of those like, well, what did you do to get in here? And it's like, oh yeah, that guy killed 3 men. How many did you kill? And it's like, I was looking at a hamburger.
Yep.
Like, that was all. That's all I wanted was a fucking hamburger.
The overarching thing here is that no matter where this guy goes, he runs into another box. He runs into another prison. You know, like even when he hits high society, his girlfriend basically blackmails him and marries him and keeps him under a chain, you know. And
he even says, living here married to you, might as well be back on the chain gang. It's just as bad. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not.
It's not really.
It's not.
You could make it work. She's got boyfriends. I'm sure she wouldn't care too much if if you had some girlfriends, you know.
Paying for the expenses of this socialite who's blackmailing you. I mean, that's bad. I'm not saying that doesn't suck. It's not spending 16 hours a day breaking rocks in Louisiana heat. It's
although you know, I guess it's just a testament to like the sort of social mores of the times. No, I can't have a wife and a girlfriend. I have to divorce my first wife and then marry my girlfriend and get a new wife. You know, so there's like a social pressure thing there. He apparently, you know, that's weighing heavy on his shoulders. Like, no, I actually have to marry the woman I love. So, you know, I can't.
Well, I mean, he was kind of coerced into marrying the first girl to begin with.
Right.
And doesn't really want to kind of be there. You know, like kind of going off and being like, well, this is my new mistress and she's making me way happier. Mm-hmm. I mean, the film really kind of, it's 1932, which, I mean, this is pre-code. So it is, you know, the film is very risque in what it's allowed to portray. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's still 1932 and it's not going to quite kind of go there the way, you know, we would probably want it to really explore this in a little bit more detail. I found it interesting, again, you've got, I mean, really, I said 3, but really there are 4, because at the very beginning of the film, it's like, you know, there's another blonde. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, you grew up nice, and I kept thinking this girl's going to come back. No, she doesn't. She
never does.
You know? And then there's a prostitute, I suppose. It's very clear that this is what this is supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. You know, when he first escapes from the chain gang and he like spends the night with her, you get a very significant fade to black, which I think is clearly supposed to be about sex. You know,
it's like, she sat on your lap and gave you a hand job right there, and then things went from there, you know, kind of thing. And she's wearing like a really tight, slinky black dress.
Right. Yeah. You know, you've got the slinky black dress that goes all the way almost to the ankles, but you're definitely showing.
I thought it was so funny too, because the shot does go down there and it's, all right, black dress, she's covered, all right, ankles, and then we focus on the ankles for a couple seconds. Oh, okay.
Okay. Right. It was 1922, I guess, at this point. So, you know, it's a thing. It's a thing. We get it. We get it. But then, like, he dates the one girl, or he, like, the girl that he, like, rents the room from. And then there's another blonde. He's like, apparently I just likes blondes, you know? I
guess, and ones that look exactly the same, because I was confused, because the girl he wants to marry, Helen, or whatever, she looks so much like his fucking secretary. Because I thought when he was at the party,
secretary, I forgot the secretary.
I thought his wife was out, you know, carousing around, you know, fucking other dudes. So he took another girl. Well, I thought he took his secretary to the party, but no, that's just Helen's just a girl he meets at the party that he falls for, you know.
Well, you know, that's how it goes, right? So the fact that he has a bunch of blonde women in his life that are, you know, basically interchangeable by the standards that, you know, again, it's 1932. We're just gonna move on.
Prison would be preferable to staying with you harpy who runs up my expense account a little bit every month.
There's also something weird going on with her accent that the film is trying to do, and that when she's trying to seduce him, like she puts on this like high society kind of, you know, like contralto kind of, you know, like sound, and then like when she's pissed at him, she just becomes this, you know what it's like. I'm not gonna be, you know, it's a very kind of like broad, brassy sort of like, you know.
Well,
like,
you get the sense that she's a woman of loose morals who would rather hang out in a bar than anything else, because he comes back to the house one time and just finds all these cigarettes and half-empty glasses of booze laying around. And I don't think the funny thing is, I don't think they changed up the set design from that shot to another shot, where I think if you probably checked, all the glasses and all the cigarettes are in exactly the same spot, although it's supposed to be like, you know, days later or something like that. Or,
right.
But, you know.
Well, I mean, what kind of man is going to like clean up for himself in that situation? He's got a maid who's going to come in and do it. Who I'm sure he paid very fair wages and was not working under the effective conditions that he was working under on the chain gang.
She definitely wasn't
under softer.
She definitely wasn't black or Mexican, and
definitely not. Well, not at this time. I mean, she was probably like Italian or something in 1921.
Oh man, scandalous.
Chicago,
or Irish, maybe.
Yeah, it could be. We should talk about the ending.
Yeah,
like as much as I like the film and as much as I think it does, like, you played this kind of extended sequence of sort of like the the legal wrangling, because this guy, like, he decides like, oh, I'm gonna go back to the chain gang. They've promised me that I'm gonna get out in 90 days, and then like they just completely fuck him over, which. Dude, it was totally gonna. Even your own lawyer is sitting there going like, "Yeah, I wouldn't do this. No, don't do this. You should stay here. You should not do this." Always, if you're given the choice of like, "Oh, I'm just going to go into this horrifying prison condition," and they have given me a promise that means nothing.
Yeah.
I expected that they were going to like pretend like, oh, and then he committed some crime while he was in, or he committed some infraction or whatever, and therefore they get to like re-sentence him or whatever. Like that's how they do it in real life. It's none of this, high-minded stuff. But he goes back in, escapes again in a really phenomenal like chase sequence. It's a really, really well done action sequence. And then, like, in the last, like, 2 minutes of the film, he just kind of ends up being this, like, person who, like, is, like, kind of stealing in the shadows, and he gets in this very, as you said, this kind of noir attitude. And, like, the final lines of the film are, like, he reaches out to Helen, he, like, meets her, and she wants him to kind of come back, and she wants to be with him again. And like his life is a shambles, and she's like, "How do you survive?" And he goes, "I steal." And that's the last line of the film. Yeah. Now, I have no problem with the idea that the prison system itself and the persecution of this guy has turned him into this the common criminal that it always pretended he was to begin with. Yeah. I do have a problem with it being completely unremarked upon until the final 2 minutes of an hour and 32 minutes.
That's the problem. This movie, it's very like, it goes by super quick. 90 minutes basically, and it hits all the points. But then it gets to this, and then it just feels so tacked on. Like, it just feels so tacked on.
Because you could just end it. I mean, it is a really powerful ending, and I think in 32, I think that was something that really sent the audience kind of out of the movie with this like message of like, this is what this guy's been brought to. But you could easily end it on the like sequence of newspaper articles of, where is this guy? He's gone. He's missing, etc., etc. And then just sort of like fade out from there, or have some.
You could end it on him getting killed. It would be more effective. You can end
it on like her pining away for him, like wondering where he is, and just kind of leave it a little bit more ambiguous. It's just like when you have him like show up again and kind of just going like, I've become a hunted animal, and he's now like completely paranoid. Again, created by the system, created by this like prison complex, created by that thing, but it doesn't like, it just doesn't quite work thematically. Like, we haven't seen that progression in his character, like he's still,
right,
and I think that's just something that, like, as a modern audience, we kind of expect there to be a little bit more of a, we expect to see the foreshadowing a little bit more.
If you had like another half hour, there is really the story of the lives that he's left behind, because he broke out of prison again and he's gone, and there should be like some sort of exploration of that, but there isn't. It's just we don't have time for it. We have an hour and a half, guys. We got to do it. I was like, you could have thought a better ending. You really could have had a better ending.
In a modern remake, there was actually a made-for-TV version of it on HBO with Val Kilmer. Which I'm really curious. If we
this is actually this one's actually based on actually Burns's story. It's not so much a remake as it is docudrama of the real thing. So the Man Who Broke 1,000 Chains from 1987 with Kilmer.
which I just think I would break 1,000 chains, and I would break 1,000 more.
Fuck off.
But yeah, no. I mean, despite my kind of issues with the ending, and despite sort of like, I think it's a really well made film. I think it's phenomenal stuff, and like groundbreaking for the time, and looks amazing. I mean, I think we could kind of like poke at certain sequences. It's this kind of social realism stuff that I think it really, really works, and it's really well done. And I think I wish I'd seen this earlier. Yeah, and ironically, like really like kind of relevant even to the modern day. You know, in the sense of the way that it's sort of portraying these kind of horrifying prison conditions, which again, I mean, you're Canadian, so you get to like shunt this off to the richer brother to the south. The U.S. has the largest incarcerated population in the world, living under conditions that are not significantly better than what we're seeing in this film, and in some ways probably worse. There's stuff from the inside of like Mississippi prisons that just it's horrifying. Like it literally is hell. Yeah. And you know, I know we try to do like the funny movie podcast, but this shit is legitimately awful, and we don't talk about that enough, despite the fact that we are having protests going on to abolish the whole system, and liberals are like, but some people need to go to prison. What do we do with serial killers? Not this. That's what we do with serial. Not this. That's the answer, and also not people who stole a loaf of bread and served 30 years in this fucking system, which still fucking happens. I'm very angry about this. But anyway.
No, you take serial killers and you never talk about them again. You just put them in a hole and, you know, give them 3 meals a day. Maybe don't beat them to death or whatever the fuck, but, you know, just put them in a hole. Don't let them be famous, maybe.
We can have fewer serial killers if we had like better social services.
That too, yeah.
There are other answers to this, you know, like it doesn't do any good to torture people. Like it's just bad. It's just bad.
You got to fix the prisons, but at the same time, fixing prisons doesn't fix the social problems that made the prisons happen and made the people go to the prisons at the same time.
Right.
So yeah.
This film, 90 years old, 88 years old, 88. What a great
and
name.
it's fucking brilliant.
And could be made today. You could make this today.
Yeah. It kind of feels to me like Night of the Living Dead in a way. It's one of those films where you kind of look at it and go like, wow, they really didn't make them quite like this before this film for the most part. You know, kind of a bit of a sea change, but yeah. So a little bit of we'll go to.
And Paul Mooney was a child star in Yiddish theater.
Nice.
And in like one of his very early roles when he was 12 years old, he played an 80-year-old. And he did all his own makeup. He was a makeup expert. He did all his own makeup in many, many films, including like The Life of Louis Pasteur, where he was an expert makeup artist. He could have had a career just as a makeup artist, despite like that's how good he was. Imagine if like Rick Baker also played the Terminator in addition to that's the level of talent we're looking at here.
He played the Terminator and he looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the same time.
Exactly.
Is that good? Budget for this was $228,000 and it got a return of $1.5 million. So it did very well that year for Warner Brothers. We got some DVD info here. There's no Blu-ray for this, apparently.
Yeah, there should be. Criterion. Listen.
I'm so surprised this is not on Criterion. It's so fucking up their alley. It should be there. But Warner Brothers has a DVD from 2005 that is super pricey by the looks of it. It was $60-some, I think, was the sort of trending price. And there's also a Warner Brothers, and I think this is like a single release. Like they took all these films in this collection and single release them too. But they have their Controversial Classics collection from 2005, and it's got Bad Day at Black Rock, Blackboard Jungle, I think, some stuff.
That's a good collection. Yeah, no.
Yeah, it was I was looking at a lot of good stuff on it, and that's to get that's like 120-ish, I think, something like that. So I'd be like, get the collection instead, and you'll get all those films. You know, instead of paying half the price for this one DVD, get the entire fucking collection for like $120 or whatever. But yeah,
I rented it on Amazon for $2.
Yeah, I rented it on YouTube.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I rented it on YouTube. It was $2 in both places. It's
streaming everywhere.
It's worth $2.
It's streaming everywhere, and the only reason it's not on Blu-ray is because physical media has been dying out. That's probably the reason. Paul Muni conducted several intensive meetings with Robert E. Burns and Burbank in order to capture the way the real fugitive walked and talked, in essence, to catch the smell of fear, quote unquote. He also refused a double for the rock quarry scene, so he got fucking eye strain and blisters and sunburn and all that shit. So he did the method thing, eh?
Yeah. Before the method, I don't know how early Stanislavski was doing his thing in the theater, but I mean, clearly this is pre-method. Yeah.
So James Cagney was originally cast as James Allen in this, which I don't know if that works. I feel like I love Cagney, but he's big, and I think too big for this, maybe.
I think, it is one of the, and Paul Mooney, like, this is at the beginning of Paul Mooney's career, right? Like, a few years later, he was kind of like the Brad Pitt of his sort of, like, time period of, being someone who was both seen as, like, this, like, huge star, but also had, like, serious acting chops who could kind of do the thing. But this was at the very beginning. Like, this is very early in his career, at least in film. He had done a couple of films in the silent era, and sort of, at least the late 20s. But this and Scarface come out in the same year, and this is like his big, like, blow up moment, right?
Yeah.
And then so I feel like even a few years later, it would have seemed weird to sort of have him do this role, because he would have been, like, bigger than the role. But I think it's interesting to kind of put yourself in the place of the audience in 1932 and kind of go, like, yeah, this guy that maybe we've seen in a couple of movies. He's kind of this, like, well-known kind of guy on the stage, but, not like huge movie star, which again, he became very clearly after this. Like,
Yeah. Spencer Tracy was also considered for this at one point, which kind of works.
Yeah, certainly in this era, I could see Spencer Tracy in the early 30s. Yeah,
and
I'm also Spencer Tracy from the later stuff that he did. So I'm kind of imagining him in, like, 1957, kind of wandering in his like rotund, like, I'm breaking rocks. Got to break some rocks.
I like after Bad Day of Black Rock, I kind of just want Spencer Tracy. Like, I wanted him, as offensive as this would be now, because he wasn't handicapped. I kind of want him to be the guy whose his gimmick was in every movie he has one arm, and I want him to have one arm in this film and this do his thing. I'm
just imagining, like, 1950 Spencer Tracy having his, like, manacles hammered by a giant African American man. Take it. And you're just gonna look at it and go, like, your ankles are broken. Like, I was looking at this and just, like, watching this and going, like, I'd last like 2 days. Like,
yeah, no, there's no way. Like, it's, I mean, it's just a different breed of person. Like, you come back from fucking World War I, you survive that,
right?
And then here's what you're expected to do. These days you come back from war, it's, I should get money to go to college and get a nice, job where I don't have to worry about breaking my back in labor and stuff. Like, I should be, given that by my government for my service to my country. Here it's like, come back from World War I, back to the factory with you, and no complaints. And, I don't want to sit here and, like, go, the greatest generation and all this fucking bullshit, but there's a little bit to that. There was a tougher life. There was definitely more expected of a person. Don't whine, don't complain, just fucking get to it, kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I think there's a mythology that we tell ourselves even now, because, like, soldiers do come back from the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and and soldiers do kind of do their service and then come back, and then, like, okay, maybe you do the GI Bill, but also like, what the fuck are you gonna do in the process? Like, you get money for college, but, like, you still got to go and do lots of manual labor. Like, I knew somebody, like, kind of back in the day, who put in his, like, 20 years in the Army, got out at, like, 38, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then went and started up a lawn mowing business and was like mowing lawns for a living. because you do your 20 years, like you've done your time, and then it's like, well, now what else are you gonna do? Mow lawns, And
Yep.
he was like, no, I'm happy to do this. It's like it'll gives me something to do, gets me out in the sun, I enjoy it or whatever. But like it's that doing that job. I mean, granted, depending on when this was in Alabama, and I can't imagine like having a life of like mowing lawns in Alabama. But for this guy, this is what he wanted to do. Like, and like that is very similar to the like, and then you go into the factory job sort of thing. Like this connects with me in terms of what I was kind of talking about earlier about the kind of social conduct of the factory work versus like the soldier work versus the prison labor kind of system. And that is, there's a lot of talk today about how people who are a little bit younger than us, people, particularly kind of the next generation down, and then the one after that, the millennials and the Zoomers are having this issue of like, well, I finished school, I go to college or whatever, and then I come out and there are no jobs and there's no like factory work. Well, that factory work was fucking awful. Like nobody wanted to do that. You did that because like it was backbreaking labor, but you could make a living for yourself and your family, and you could have that house and you could have that thing. But the big thing that we talked about at the time, like as a culture, was we shouldn't have to do this anymore.
Yeah.
We should not have to have this in our life, And then all those jobs went away for a variety of complicated reasons. And it's like, well, now you don't even have that option anymore of like, I'm going to go and like torture myself for 40 years, but I will have like a pretty decent living and I will be able to feed a family, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like there is this sort of like balance, right? Between like, we can have this, it's a nuanced conversation that we should be able to have around these kind of varying things. Automation is good. It saves people from the back-breaking labor, but the benefits of that automation don't accrue to the workers. It accrues to the capitalist class.
Yeah.
It's not what you thought you were going to get when you clicked on a podcast about a movie from 1932, but that's where my brain went. So there you go.
Yeah. So I'm a Fugitive for a Chain Gang was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Paul Mooney secured a Best Actor mention. He lost to Charles Laughton for The Private Life of Henry VIII, while the film was also recognized for Best Sound. The film lost the Best Picture trophy to Cavalcade from 1932.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't know. I don't
either,
But this feels like the Best Picture from 1932, honestly.
Despite the fact that we've seen a lot of really great films from 1932. But yeah, no. I'm kind of thinking that you and I, or if there was someone doing just a pre-code podcast, it would be amazing. We would get bored just kind of doing films because the pre-code era, like, officially is sort of like all the way back to the beginning of film up until about like mid-1934.
Yeah.
July 30th, I think it's like July 1st, 1934 is like the day that the Hays Code officially comes into it. And so anything before that. But really the reality is like you're talking about like the advent of sound or a couple of years after to like 33, 34, sort of thing. So you're really only talking about like at most like 5 years worth of movies, right? And so many amazing films were made in this era precisely because of kind of like this weird like censor board kind of context. And so you get this like really weird stuff that the slinky, you see the shot of like the girl in the slinky dress and you're going to go all the way down. We're going to go down to her ankles, right? And that's like the really like sexy shot. But at the same time, like you wouldn't see this again until like the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something amazing about this era, and that's what's so fascinating about it. Like I really love like watching films from this like very particular time period. So
even though we've seen a lot of great stuff, 32 has been a lot of fun. It's right up there with
I think moving to 33 is probably what we need to do, just so we can eventually come back to 32.
Yeah.
There's great stuff in 33. There's great stuff in 33. Don't worry, I've got a list.
Yeah, we've got a large fucking list. So what are we doing next week, Daniel?
So one film that I definitely want to do is Gabriel Over the White House, which is a literally like pro-fascist movie, which sort of gets framed as not being that because like, no, it's warning people against. No, it was a very pro-fascist movie. I'm having some issues sourcing it. So we will do it as soon as I can buy a DVD for $20 and like rip it and send it to you in Minecraft. I would not actually.
In Minecraft, of course.
In Minecraft, I would not actually. We will buy dual copies and each have it for ourselves. So that's the way we're going to do this. Anyway, it is accessible. It's not streaming anywhere. So I was looking at the list. There are a couple of blonde girl movies. There's like a kind of a, again, pre-code kind of racy movie, and then sort of a comedy drama thing. And those two are both Babyface and Bombshell from 1933. And I think we should like just dive into that for next week and just sort of like move away from the more like socio-political context. And just kind of have a little bit of fun with a couple of like goofy pre-code movies, if that sounds good to you.
We're gonna leave 32, and we're not gonna do Blonde Venus.
We could do Blonde Venus and Shanghai Express are two Marlene Dietrich movies from 32. If you want to do those instead, I'm happy to do that. It's sort of the same phenomenon of like, just watch Marlene Dietrich be sexy and cool in two films from 32. I thought maybe we should just move on to 33 just as a way of like moving forward.
Okay.
It's really up to you.
No, actually, that's good. 33, we've got 2 upcoming guest episodes too, which
So I think we could do those 2 films, and then and then let you kind of schedule out kind of what's kind of going on there with. We also have Deluge, which is a disaster movie. Great special effects from 1933. So if you want to do Deluge, I would be happy to just do that instead.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I'll talk to you off the podcast. Deluge would probably work better because that would give us a few less films to watch potentially for something.
Sure. No, that's fine with me. No, I like to do 2 if it's just kind of like we're not gonna have a whole lot to say, so it's kind of sort of just kind of cram in. But yeah, also I haven't tried to source Deluge yet, but I think it's gonna be pretty widely available. So. All this gets kind of a podcast, or usually we do this after we end up recording. Like, we end the recording and then have the 20-minute conversation about what we're doing next week. But it's fine.
Yeah. So Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
I am on Twitter at Daniel E. Harper. If you want to come follow me around and look at mostly what I tweet about is fucking Nazi dipshits and the effects they have on the world, and that's because I've been researching these people for a long time. I do another podcast, which you've probably heard of if you're a fan of this podcast. Unless you just cut everything off like 10 minutes early, you've probably heard of this podcast. It's called I Don't Speak German. Because A, I don't speak German, and B, I listen to fucking Nazis all the time, and I know what they say when they don't think anyone like me is listening to them. Although now they know who I am, and so they like to go and hide in darker corners, which is great for everyone. So anyway, if you want to know what I have learned by listening to fucking Nazis for 4 years, go check it out. I don't speak German.libsyn.com.
And if you don't want to do that,
you don't want to do that.
If you want to take a break from that, you can go to tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our Apple Podcast, Facebook, and YouTube links. Join the Facebook group. Best way to get in contact with us. If you want to send in voicemails, we have that option now. So if you want to do that, audio feedback, just look at tmbdos.podbean.com, and the email is there. You can just cut and paste into your Gmail or whatever the fuck you got going on. Remember back in the day when there was email links on stuff? That's not really a thing anymore, right? It's kind of like most people don't really have like, you click an email and then it opens up into your email service thing. It's more like it's all Gmail.
Most people don't really have like a like sort of an external mail like software anymore. Right. Most of the time, you're either using like an app on your phone or you're using a tab in a browser. And so I think that's kind of where that, because it used to be like it's like a mail to link in that thing where you click on it and then it opens up Thunderbird or whatever. And there's still some of that. I mean, like work email. I mean, my job, I get like kind of work emails, and it's like you can just like, click on somebody's name, but that's like it feeds you into like the company address book and does its own thing. Anyway, we don't have to talk about how corporate email works. That's not what people come to this podcast for. I don't know. Do you want to spend an hour talking about how corporate email works? We could. Subscribe to the Patreon. We can do that. Like, it's fine.
Subscribe to the non-existent Patreon for that fantasy podcast, ladies and gentlemen. All your desires will be, the thirst will be quenched there.
Let's talk about how technology worked in the 90s. I can explain the AOL floppy disks to the Zoomers.
Listen to two grandpas tell the Zoomers how things used to be and how they were better.
Yeah. It was better when you got 5 free hours from AOL. Give you a floppy
disk every month. Oh, I had so many coasters back in the day. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Daniel. And we're going to be back when we're back. Goodbye.
Breaking rocks out here on the chain gang. Breaking rocks and serving my time. Breaking rocks out here on the chain gang. Cause I've been convicted of crime. I hold it steady right there while I hit it. Well, I reckon that ought to get it. Working, working, but it still got so terribly far to go. I committed crime, Lord, I need crime of being hungry and poor. I left the grocery store, man, breathing when he caught me robbing his store. Hold it steady right there while I hit it. Well, I reckon that ought to get it. Been working, working, but I still got so terribly far to go. Gonna see my sweet honey baby. Gonna break this chain off the rung. I'm gonna lay down somewhere shady. Lord, the show is hot in the sun. Hold it steady right there while I hit it. Well, I reckon that ought to get it. Been working, working, but I still got so terribly far to go. Breaking rocks out here on the chain gang. Oh, I've been working and working, but I still got so terribly far to go.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For further episodes, our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links, please go to tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.